So, how much does Dana White really make? I think you're going to be quite surprised. In this video, we're going to break down Dana White's compensation structure, as well as how much money he has made over the past few years. This is Rob from UpNext MMA, and before we get into this video, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, click on the bell button. When you do, you will be notified once we have uploaded another video for you guys. And just overall, if you like the video, please smash that like button. We always appreciate it when you do. It helps make sure that the video gets out to more people that might find this content interesting. But either way, with today's video, we're going to get more into compensation. There's been a lot of talk lately about fighter pay, whether it's John Jones, Jorge Masvidal, Paige Van Zandt. It seems to be a constantly erupting topic lately. So I think, why wouldn't it be interesting to examine what the boss makes? What's Dana White's net worth, as well as how much does he make? So let's get into it. So a lot of you OG MMA fans know who Dana White is. You know how the story of the UFC as well as Dana's story. But for those of you who don't, I'm going to run through it just real quick. So if you do already know it, just skip ahead a minute or two. Anyway, from promoting fights, to matchmaking, to damage control, to the compensation of athletes, nothing happens in the UFC without Dana approving it. Dana has been with the UFC since 2001. Actually, and before that, he actually was managing MMA fighters, the most notable ones being Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell. But he became friends with Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, who are owners of casinos in Las Vegas. For those of you who don't know, they're also well-known billionaires. He convinced them to buy a near-bankrupt UFC. They were banned from pay-per-view at the time and all that, and he convinced them to buy it for $2 million. Now, back then, like I said before, the UFC was in shambles. The promotion made next to no money, and it was banned on pretty much every television network and all platforms, including pay-per-view, which is crazy. Dana White and the Fertitta brothers fought tooth and nail and spent tens of millions of dollars and worked around the clock for nearly 3 to 4 years to morph the UFC into what we know today. Now, the UFC today is very profitable. All of this could not have been done without Dana White. Now, from the clothing that he wears to the car that he drives, it seems like he's very handsomely rewarded for his efforts. And rightfully so. You have to keep in mind, in the early and mid 2000s, the company was tens of millions of dollars in debt. And it was really, them putting more money down to do The Ultimate Fighter on Spike TV that turned everything around. So Dana today is worth an estimated $500 million, which is absolutely wild, given that he was broke when him and the Fertittas bought the UFC. But let's break all this down. Where does this money come from? Let's get into it. Now, most of these figures that we're going to discuss are an estimation, since we do not have the UFC payroll on hand, unfortunately. Now, the UFC is pretty notorious for not being transparent when it comes to anything related to money, which makes sense. They want to keep all that information private as long as possible. But due to the sale of their company in the summer of 2016, as well as a few, financial reporting agencies, we have some documents and some figures that we can lean on to get a better idea of how much Dana was making, as well as how much the UFC was making. Now, during the sale of the company, it was revealed that Dana White owned around 9 to 10% of the UFC and received that much in profits over the years. That's pretty solid, since the company has been grossing at least several $100 million for well over a decade. But the explosion in revenue really came when the company signed a 7-year television deal with Fox in 2011. Fox would compensate the UFC $100 to $120 million per year to host fight nights on their platform almost weekly. They were also holding 13 to 14 pay-per-view events per year. According to David Meltzer from The Wrestling Observer, in 2014, the UFC grossed close to $450 million in revenue and profited just under $74 million. So if White is taking home 10% of the profits, that means he made close to $7.4 million in 2014. Not bad. The very next year, in 2015, the UFC generated over $600 million in revenue and profited over $150 million, increasing Dana White's cut to around $15 million in 2015. Now, the explosion in revenue was mainly due to the explosion in star power, mainly from Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor. 2015 was the year both of them blew up. Now, things kind of keep getting better for Dana White from there. Due to the mainstream crossover of the stars that I mentioned earlier, that put the company in a prime position to maximize its worth in a sale. And that's exactly what they did. In the summer of 2016, the UFC sold the company, or sold Zuffa, which is the company that owns the UFC, to WME, now called Endeavor. And they sold it for $4.2 million. Given that Dana White owned around 10% of the company, that made his cut of the sale about $400 million. Wait, pause. How much? Yeah, that's right. 400 M's. Safe to say that Dana White won't ever have to work another day in his life. Not to say that he needed to do so before the multi-million-dollar paydays he was getting year after year, but now Dana White has what the educated fellows would call generational wealth. That means Dana's great-great-great-grandkids won't ever have to worry about money. They won't be teaching kickboxing classes in Dorchester like Dana was in his 20s. They'll be chilling on some private island or in some mansion, sipping, I don't know, whatever rich white people drink. Now, you would think at this point, Dana would just chill and retire, right? I mean, that's maybe what you would do. It's definitely what I would do if I had $400 million in the bank. But Dana's not like the rest of us, which is why he's accomplished so much. He decides to stay with the UFC after the sale. He was able to negotiate a deal with Endeavor where he still receives 9% of the UFC's profits for his efforts of running the company, which makes sense. Why get rid of probably the main catalyst for how the company got to where it was, especially when no one else in the industry can do it probably as well as Dana White can, right? Now, in 2017, the company made over $700 million. Now, a lot of this came from the Conor McGregor-Floyd Mayweather fight, but also came from, once again, just the UFC's deal with Fox and the pay-per-views. And in 2018, they made $600 million. Now, if we estimate that the UFC profited around 20% in that time frame, which is about where they've been in the past before this, anywhere from 15 to 20%, we can conclude that Dana White's payouts from 2017 and 2018 were around 14 million and 12 million respectively, right? So that's pretty good because Dana White just keeps stacking paper. I mean, can't hate on him, but he ain't done. In May of 2018, the UFC signed a multi-billion-dollar television deal with ESPN, cutting ties with Fox. This deal with ESPN would significantly increase the UFC's revenue. In 2019, the UFC made close to $950 million. just under $1 billion pretty much. The UFC's profits were still around the 20 to 25% range, which I think is actually a pretty conservative number. The UFC in the early Fox years were around 15 to 20%. The later years, they were around 20 to 25. But either way, you know, if Dana's getting paid 9% of the profits, that brings his payday in 2019 close to $20 million. That's pretty good, man. Not to mention, according to Dana White, the ESPN deal increased the net worth of the UFC to $7 billion. Dana and the UFC got so much money they were able to hand out $300 million in dividends to their investors in March of 2020. And they were also able to, I don't know about secure, but they were able to basically fandango a deal to get a private island in Abu Dhabi to host fights during the coronavirus pandemic. Pretty good. Now, it's pretty easy to see how Dana's worth $500 million. He has played one of the biggest roles in increasing the exposure and revenue of the UFC, as well as mixed martial arts as a whole. This story is actually quite inspiring, but for every one of you who find this story inspiring, there will be one of you that says that the fighters get paid 16% of the revenue, which is true. They've been paid 16 to 19% of the revenue for quite some time, as well as some very notable fighters have very well been underpaid, while athletes in the NFL, NBA, NHL, they receive anywhere from 45 to 55% of the revenue. Yes, this is all true. And like I just said, I do believe that the big name fighters are underpaid. Dana probably has played a direct hand in that. Yes, he has also trashed some of these fighters and the media in public on numerous occasions. Listen, Dana White's far from perfect. You can say a lot of things about Dana. One thing you can't call him, though, is dumb. He's a very shrewd businessman and has operated the UFC like a machine. He has a get it done at all costs mentality. And it served him pretty well, especially when running this company. It will keep serving Dana White well into the future. Love him or hate him, he's here to stay with the UFC for the foreseeable future. And he's going to continue to make that money. Alright guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you guys think of Dana White's compensation as well as how much he makes. Tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think he deserves that? Do you think, he is overcompensated? What do you guys think, especially in relation to what the fighters are paid? Tell me what you guys think of Dana White and his actions, his shrewd business moves over the years. Give me your opinion. I love chatting it up with you guys in the comments. Other than that, please smash that like button if you like this video. Also, remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're updated whenever we have a new video coming out. This will also allow you to stay on top of all of our new content. We have 3 videos for you guys coming out every week, and I appreciate you guys for watching until the end. Alright, talk to you soon. Bye.